almost all of them said to me the same thing. I saw my dad destroyed by my mother in divorce court. And they said it that way. They didn't say it was destroyed by the courts. They said it was destroyed by their mother. And they do not intend to have that happen to them. And they were taken from their fathers forcefully. And so their idea is to have children where they actually have rights, and then they can get married to a woman, but she won't be able to take their children. And I think it's a rational approach to dealing with the risks of marriage in the modern world.
That's a horrifying reality.
It is. And
I've also heard many similar stories. This is why you have, it's not exactly why you have some of these groups like
Men Go Their Own Way.
Yes, MGTOW, right?
Yeah,
but
I'm opposed to MGTOW, by the way.
Yeah. Do you want to?
Oh, I wanna
elaborate and give us your view.
Absolutely, 100% sympathetic to Jeff's position. He is absolutely correct about how the divorce courts stack the deck against men and against fathers, and very often allow the woman to weaponize the courts against men who all they want is to love and be connected to their children, but then they end up paying through the nose for kids they never get to see. And I feel bad for the men, but I'm enraged on behalf of the kids. Enraged. What they are losing, what Jeff's sons have lost, is not something that can ever be quantified. Not at all. It's a lifelong loss that they're going to experience that wound forever. They're being starved of not just the male love that all children need, but the biological identity that comes from being raised by their own dad. I mean, what the courts have done to Jeff and what they are doing to thousands of other men across this country is criminal.
And you see why I love Katie Faust.
Well, and that is why one of the planks set them before us is to fight no-fault divorce, which very, very often hands the most power to the women. No-fault divorce is probably the proximate cause of all this. I agree.
Well,
but let's talk surrogacy.
Well, actually, I was going to say, as we're introducing these ideas of, why is there even a conversation about surrogacy? Perhaps we should pause and talk about no-fault divorce, which is the legal change and the social change.
We must talk about no-fault divorce.
Yeah, and then, surrogacy is very much a technological advance. Were it not possible to do IVF, we wouldn't even be talking about it.
Correct. That's right.
But before we even get into the science of how society is changing, I think no-fault divorce, we've talked about it quite a bit. I think this is a cause of a massive amount of problems and contention today.
Yeah. So the way that we talk about it then before us is functionally what children are right now is accessories to be cut and pasted into any and every adult relationship, right? We have an understanding of parental rights to their children, but we don't have an idea of children's rights to their own parents. And those actually go together, right? People care which baby they take home from the hospital. They don't want just any kid in the nursery. They actually want their baby. There's something precious and special about taking your own child home. There is something distinct and wonderful about your own progeny. And we can get into adoption later, but there was that ridiculous article like last week that was like, wanting your own biological children is, what was it called? It was a racist. I know she equated it with white supremacy or whatever it was. Yeah. And that is like all of these arguments. And I think where we're going with your argument, Jeff, is this idea that you're going to be able to overhaul human nature. You, no matter how technology changes, no matter how law changes, no matter how culture changes, you cannot overhaul child nature. And children have a natural right to be known and loved by both of their biological parents. Those two adults grant children statistically the safest home that they're going to experience. Like if your wife remarries, the man that joins her life will never be as statistically connected to, invested in, and protective of your sons
He'll
as
be one of
you
the greatest
are.
threats to him.
That's correct. Yep. This is right. Not only will he not be as connected and invested, he will statistically be one of the most dangerous people in their life. Okay, so we have to get very clear about children having a right to their own mother and father. The threats that have disconnected children from that are cultural, legal, and technological. So we'll be talking about one of the technological shifts that have commodified children and turned them into functional accessories. But the legal shifts have also been at play since the late 60s, and it began with no-fault divorce. No-fault divorce was the first, in essence, redefinition of the family. It transformed what used to be the most child-friendly institution the world has ever known, marriage, into just another vehicle of adult fulfillment. It said, we used to have this idea that marriage was going to be permanent, and the only time you would break it up is if one spouse was found to be at fault of abuse, adultery, abandonment, addiction. But we turned to no-fault divorce. And since women have sort of higher rates of emotional expectation, they tend to be dissatisfied more quickly in the marriage. And when you can get out of it for no fault, they get out of it sooner. So that was the original redefinition of marriage, and legally what put all of this in place when it comes to treating children as accessories.
No fault divorce is just the end of marriage. Marriage does not exist.
That's right.
There's people have mentioned covenant marriage, I think it's called, in like Alabama. I'm not sure what other states have it. And this is them trying to recodify what actual marriage is.
Yeah.
But there is, quite literally, if you enter into a spiritual, moral, and legal contract till death do us part, but the legal has been completely removed and the moral foundations of society have become dissociative or fractured,
Yes.
then you quite literally are just dating.
Right.
We've seen these fling marriages for a year or two. You see all these celebrities, they're married for 5 years and then they're broken up. That's not marriage.
Right.
It is not marriage. And this gives me the opportunity. I really think productive discussions start from what the Greeks used to call stasis, where people agree.
For real.
Because then we can reason out from where we agree and try to achieve clarity where we disagree and maybe even overcome those disagreements.
Jeff and I agree on a lot. I
Yeah.
think.
I don't disagree actually with anything she said. That may surprise you. I think the intact nuclear family with one mother and one father is the best thing for children, objectively the best thing. It's also the most enduring institution in human history. It actually predates history.
Correct.
It goes back before written history.
This is right.
It's the most enduring institution, the most successful institution ever. So I'm all in favor of that. I am concerned with notions of children's rights. We can talk about why that is.
We can.
But one of the fundamental things that we lost, and I think we lost it with the Enlightenment, but it really showed up in the American conception of rights. People have come to think of rights as floating abstractions, right? But all rights come with concomitant duties.
That's right.
To me, children's rights are the prudent exercise of parental rights, right? We have to be careful with the child's best interest too, because courts have misused that, as you know.
That's right.
And there's no real objective child's best interest for everything. There are some objective things, like, for example, having a mother and a father. I am, on the other hand, not an idealist. I am dealing with the world as it actually is today, with the political situation as it actually is today, where over half of children are being raised in single mother homes. And in that world, men have to be very serious about protecting themselves before they have children or before they get married.
This is interesting because you mentioned someone going to I think you said Argentina.
Yes.
Fresh and Fit talked about something called passport bros.
Yeah.
These are guys who know they can't, or who believe they cannot find a wife in the United States because of the culture, the moral frameworks this country has. So they go to other countries
With traditional values.
but also a lower standard of living.
Yeah.
So they're viewed more favorably. Like they
Yes.
mentioned going to the Philippines,
Yeah.
where the standard of living is low. So you have these young women who see an American come here. They're wealthy, they have access, and that is attractive to them. And so you're going to end up with a wife who is more committed and actually more worried about the relationship breaking apart. Whereas in America, you have the feminist, more woke vision where women can have it all, do what they want, and leave whenever they want, and courts will favor them if they do.
Yeah. So there's a lot of work to be done, but the answer cannot be whatever work needs to be done in culture, in law, and in technology. And there is a lot to be done. The answer cannot be a kid is going to sacrifice for me. I understand the system is broken. I understand the technology is advancing way beyond our ethical conversations, but the solution can never be this kid sacrifices so I can have what they want. And ultimately, that's what surrogacy does in 100% of cases.
I don't actually believe the sacrifice of a single father home is equivalent to the sacrifice of a single mother home. Single father homes have outcomes which are much better than single mother homes, and it's substantially close to two-parent homes, so they're not as good. And
I'd
it's
like to
certainly
see
not
that.
more.
Is that in the brief that you gave me?
It is not in. It's not in these two, but I can get you one. I can
Okay.
get you two actually. Two.
So I know that there's a few studies, but what studies do you have that show outcomes for children who were motherless at birth?
So there's two studies. One of them has a subpopulation study. So for example, it does find that there's like less criminality, higher college attainment, less suicidality.
Equivalent to the two-parent married biological parents?
No, between single mother homes and
Versus single father.
homes.
Sure.
Right.
Okay. I
And
can
then
see
the
that.
subpopulation study here, which you remember, I have to be honest, like subpopulation studies are less conclusive. But the subpopulation studies, they say, well, of these single father homes, which ones were from illness right? Deaths like that and
Right.
accidental deaths.
Interesting.
And they find the same effects. The effects are similar, although it's not conclusive.
You're saying similar between the child whose mother died versus the child whose mother left through divorce.
Yes.
Okay.